Good morning, boys and girls. Today we are going to be diving into lesson 7.5, which has to deal with multiplying mixed numbers by whole numbers. This is just an extension of the previous lessons in this unit, such as we have been doing fractions times whole numbers. For example, 4/8 times 3, which would give you 12/8. Now we're going to be doing a mixed number times a whole number, like 2 1/3 times 3. And I'm going to go over in today's lesson how to multiply these mixed numbers by whole numbers. Okay. To start off, here's some mental math fluency. I would like for you to pause the video and in your math journal, go ahead and complete these questions. You can resume the video when you're ready to check your answers. So the first answer, the multiples of 2 up to 10 are 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. The multiples of 5 up to 20 are 5, 10, 15, 20. The multiples of 10 up to 50 are 10, 20, 30, 40, and 50. Try it again with these three. Go ahead and pause and start the video when you're ready to check your answers. The first multiples up to 20 of 3 are 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, and 18. The reason 20 is not on there is because 20 is not a multiple. The next multiple would be 21. For 4, it's 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, and 28. For 6, it's 6, 12, 18, 24, and 30. For these three, go ahead and pause the video and then resume it when you're ready to check your answers. The first multiples up to 40 of 7 are 7, 14, 21, 28, 35. For 8 up to 50, it's 8, 16, 24, 32, 40, and 48. For 9, it's 9, 18, 27, 36, 45, 54, and 63. For today's math message, I'm going to have you try this on your own. It says, last week, Tamika practiced the trumpet for 2/3 of an hour each day. What was the total number of hours she practiced? Remember that there are 7 days in a week. Go ahead and then resume the video when you think you have an answer. Okay, so the equation that you should have set up was 7 times 2/3, which equals 14/3, and if you convert that into a mixed number, that is 4 2/3 hours. Now, one of the ways that you could have done it was the first way. Now, if this way confuses you, you can look at the other ways, which is probably how you did it. So for example, the rule that we're used to is multiplying the whole number times the numerator and keeping the denominator the same, which is what's shown here. If you used repeated addition, you would also come up with the same answer. If you drew a picture, you could also see what's shown below. Now, there's a question that says, between what two whole numbers does your answer lie? Well, 4 2/3 of an hour. I know that it's not quite 5 hours, and it's a little over 4 hours. So, between what two whole numbers does it lie would be 4 and 5. How many minutes are there in 4 2/3 of an hour? Well, to do this, I'm going to allow you to use a calculator when it comes to these questions if you have one. If not, you can show your work on the side. So I know that there's 60 minutes in 1 hour. So I'm going to take 4 hours times 60, which gets me 240 minutes. But there's still 2/3 of an hour left. Well, I know that 1/3 of an hour is the same thing as 20 minutes. So 20 minutes plus my original 240 minutes is 280 minutes. Now, I forgot to say that 1/3 of an hour is 20 minutes, but 2/3 of an hour would be another 20 minutes. So that's where the 40 minutes came from. How many seconds is that? Well, your calculator might come in handy here, because 280 minutes times 60 will get you 16,800 seconds. Okay, here's our focus. Last class, we multiplied fractions less than 1 and greater than 1 by whole numbers. Today, we will look closely at mixed numbers and explore different strategies for multiplying a mixed number by a whole number. Okay, so we're going to use the question from the math message, knowing that we got 4 2/3 hours. If Tamika keeps the same practice schedule, after 5 weeks, will she have practiced more or less than 1 full day? Well, first of all, we need to know how many hours are in 1 full day. 1 full day would be 24 hours. So, the equation that we need to set up is something that looks like this. We need to multiply 5 times 4 2/3. Go ahead and write that equation down in your math notebook. Now a picture might look like this. As you can see, here is 4 2/3, and what they did was they wrote it 5 times. And then they counted up how many wholes they had, which was 20, and how many fraction pieces they had, which were thirds, which was 10/3. So your answer is 20 10/3. Now, if you used repeated addition, you would do 4 2/3 10 times. So you would add all of the 4's up, and then you would add all of the 2/3 up. So you would get the same answer as 20 10/3. Now what they did is they said, well, 20 10/3 does not look right. So they said 10/3 is the same thing as 3 1/3. So my final answer, if I simplified it, would be 23 hours, 23 1/3 hours. Now, there's a couple ways that you can do 5 times 4 2/3. The first way is you can change 4 2/3, this number right here, into an improper fraction. The improper fraction would be 14/3. And now what we have is we have a whole number times a fraction, which we're used to. However, this involves a lot harder multiplication. The answer that you would get would be 70/3, and you would have to be able to know that that equals 23 1/3 hours. That's a tough way to do it. However, this is the method that I am familiar with, and I think you will find this helpful. If we take 5 times 4 2/3, we're basically going to multiply the 5 times the 4, and then the 5 times 2/3. So we're doing 2 steps instead of 1. So what that looks like is this: 5 times 4, and then we're going to add the 5 times 2/3. What does that give us? Well, 5 times 4 is 20, and 5 times 2/3 is 10/3. So our answer is 20 10/3. Now, they already went ahead and put the 10/3 into 3 1/3. When I add that up together, I get 23 1/3 hours. So we're going to go ahead and answer the question. It says, will she have practiced more or less than 1 full day? Well, knowing that 24 hours is in 1 full day, she practiced 23 1/3 hours. So she practiced less than 1 full day. Again, it says, between what 2 whole numbers does your answer lie? Well, since my answer is 23 1/3, it's a little bit bigger than 23, and it's not quite 24. So it's between 23 and 24 hours. How many minutes are there in 23 1/3 hours? Well, we know before 1/3 of an hour is 20 minutes. We just need to figure out how many minutes are in 23 hours. When you do your multiplication, you'll get 1,400 minutes. If you have to go further and go to seconds, we just need to multiply by 60. And when you do that, you get 84,000 seconds. So, it's now your turn. I want you to try this one on your own. When you're ready, go ahead and pause and then resume the video to get the answer. All right, so the first thing we need to do is, here's the picture to show you, but the multiplication will be on your right. We need to take 3 times 1 plus 3 times 1/4, because remember, this 3 is going to multiply here, and it's going to multiply here. So it will look something like this. When you do the multiplication and add it together, you will get 3 plus 3/4, which is your answer of 3 3/4. Here's another one for you to try. Go ahead and pause the video and then try this one on your own. Okay, when you're finished, remember you're going to be taking 4 times 2 plus 4 times 3/8. When you're finished, you're going to get 8 and 12/8. Now, what they did with the 12/8 is they said, well, 12/8 is the same thing as 1 and 4/8. So I'm going to go ahead now and add that together, which is 9 and 4/8, or 9 and 1/2. The next thing I have is 6 times 3 4/5. Now that you're getting better, go ahead and try this one on your own and see if you make any mistakes. All right, we know that our equation is 6 times 3 plus 4/5 because we're going to multiply the 6 times the 3 and the 6 times the 4/5. So we have 6 times 3 plus 6 times 4/5. I get 18 plus 24/5. 24/5 is the same thing as 4 and 4/5. If you're running into trouble converting 24/5 into a mixed number, that can be something that your teacher can work on with you independently. If you leave your answer as 18 and 24/5, technically you are correct. But if you go further, you will end up with an answer of 22 and 4/5. Okay, we are ready to start our journal page. I would like for you to go ahead and try journal page 240 and 241 on your own right now and check back with your answers here. If you want to watch number 1 and get some more practice, you may, and then you can move on to number 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 on your own. All right, pause the video and then come back when you're ready. Okay, for the first one, it says each member of the flute section of the Briarwoods Elementary School Band practiced for 2 3/5 hours last week. There are 5 flute players. What is the total number of hours they practiced? So your number model should be 5 times 2 3/5, which equals h. Show 2 different ways to solve the number story. Well, one way, which you might not have done, maybe you did repeated addition, could be where you did turning the mixed number into an improper fraction and then multiplying 5 times 13/5, which equals 65/5 or 13. Most of you probably did our method we're familiar with, multiplying the 5 times the 2 and multiplying the 5 times the 3/5, which equals 10 plus 15/5, and 15/5 is the same thing as 3, so 10 plus 3 equals 13. So our answer becomes 13 hours. Now, they also want you to convert that into minutes. If you have a calculator, you can do that, or you can show your work on the side. So there are 60 minutes in an hour, times 13 is 780. I'm going to then turn that into seconds by multiplying by another 60, which would give me 46,800. Okay, at the bottom, I'm noticing my page was not all the way there. You will notice here are some other ones to practice. The first one, you would have gotten 9 6/10, and the next one, you would have gotten 14 14/10, or if you converted it to 15 4/10. Number 4. Number 4 was also a trumpet question, and your number model should have been 5 plus 3 times 1 9/10, because they're adding 3 more members. So really, you could have written 8 times 1 9/10. Okay. So the one way that you could have solved this problem would have been turning the mixed number into an improper fraction and timesing 8 times 19 tenths, which would have gotten you 152 tenths, which is the same thing as 15 and 2 tenths. However, most of us probably used the method below, which is timesing 8 times 1 and then multiplying 8 times 9 tenths. When you do that, you get 8 plus 72 tenths, and 72 tenths is the same thing as 7 and 2 tenths. So when you add them together, you get 15 and 2 tenths hours. To figure out how many minutes that is, this becomes a little bit more challenging. You need to know that there's 60 minutes in an hour, so if we take 60 times 15, we get 900. Now, when you split up a clock of 60 minutes and you split them up into tenths, there are 6 minutes in each tenth. So 2 tenths would be 12 minutes. So 900 plus 12 equals 912. That one was probably a lot challenging because you needed to know how many minutes were in 2 tenths of an hour. How many seconds? Well, we're going to multiply that by 60 and we will get 54,720. Looking below, multiplying 6 times 5 and 3/12 equals 31 and 6/12. Now remember, they've already converted it into its simplest form there. So 6 times 5 is 30, and then they did 6 times 3 is 18/12. So really, if you wrote 30 and 18/12, you're technically correct. If you kept going, you would get 31 and 6/12. For the next one, they got 13 and 3/4, and once again, 5 times 2 is 10, and then 5 times 3/4 is 15/4. So if you left it as 10 and 15/4, technically you're correct. If you kept going, you would get 13 and 3/4. Here are math boxes. Please go ahead and freeze the video and then come back when you have finished. Okay, using your math skills, the first answer is 19,134. Using the bow tie method for B is 4,347. For number 2, our word problem, the number model should have been 3 and 3/8 plus 4 and 2/8 equals 7 and 5/8. How many pounds is that? Well, that would be 7 and 5/8 pounds, which is our answer. Using the pattern below, you need to figure out what the next one is. You can see it's a 3 by 4. Describe the pattern. It adds one column of 3 dots every time. Number 4 is a line plot, and it says, what's the difference between the tallest stack of dimes and the shortest? Hopefully you knew that 5/8 was the tallest and 2/8 was the shortest. So 5/8 minus 2/8 gives you 3/8. Writing/reasoning, explain how you solved problem 1B. Some of you may have talked about the bow tie method. Here's the explanation they used. Last but not least, we have our homework that you need to post to Seesaw. Please make sure that you complete all of it using the strategies we talked about today. Have fun, enjoy, and check back with your teacher later.